Hello, you're very welcome along to the Matchbook World Cup podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey. It's quarter-final time, hard to believe, and joining me to preview it all are Mark O'Hare, Adrian, Clarke, and Miguel, Delaney. We've plenty to get through here in terms of outright markets, and then we're going to preview the four games. But very quickly, just want to point you in the direction of our new sign-up offer, which the guys have landed 2 out of 3 podcast best bets on round of 16. More on a bad beat on the other one later on. But if you do want to get involved with the guys at podcast best bets, we're going to double the odds up to £50 in cash. All you have to do is enter the bonus code podcast. That's enter the bonus code podcast. Double the odds on podcast best bets. And as I said, a lot of you have copped it there in the round of 16, have that cash in your accounts there as well. So before we get into the outright, I think it was you, Adrian, that had France and under 3.5. I could see you nodding, yes. So
Yeah.
that's a bad beat, in fairness.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were never going to concede, were they? and then that was the softest of handballs. Yeah, it absolutely did my head in when that decision came in. And I must admit, there was a couple of people that reached out on social media and said, "Oh, I was on that. Can't believe it." But that's just the way it goes, isn't it? So I think we were definitely along the right lines.
Yeah, and there were some good winners, and 1-1 Japan, Morocco copped as well, Adrian. So I know I'm giving you all the credit. The guys had a few winning bets as well, but you stole the headlines here with bad beats or long shots being put up.
We'll take it. Yeah, no, it was good. No, it was a decent round, but we didn't get the Portugal-Switzerland game right, and I don't think we were alone there.
I was smiling looking at my Twitter feed as someone was thanking Mark for all the winning tips, and that was just pre the Switzerland game. But no, it was a brilliant round of 16 from Miguel, Mark, and Adrian. And we'll look at the outright market because I don't know about anyone else, but I do like kind of getting updates on it as we go. So we'll take a look at the betting firstly, as we have it at matchbook.com. You can currently back Brazil at 2.78. That's very short. France are 5.7, Argentina 7.6, same price as Portugal. England 7.8, Netherlands 19.0. And the two bigger prices are Croatia 55.0 and Morocco 60.0. Over to you, Miguel. I like what you wrote in the document here. You have France to win, but with a caveat. So tell us the caveat.
So the caveat, basically, it's essentially dependent on Netherlands, Argentina, because I think Brazil will win it, but if they play Netherlands, but if they play Argentina, I think that's going to be such an emotionally exhausting game that it potentially really takes out whoever wins for the final. We've seen this before in the World Cup, 1970, Italy, West Germany, and that game that went to distance, called the match of the century, although really kicked off next time. The most relevant example is actually probably from 1982, because it actually had this kind of wider socio-historic dimension, which was France against West Germany, 3-3, went to penalties. West Germany were wrecked by the time they played Italy for the final. And I think there's a possibility similar happens here if Argentina, Brazil, I've been to all the Argentina games so far, most of the Brazil games, and I mean, beyond anything, even the atmospheres around them, the intensity, if they play each other at a semi-final stage as well, that's something the World Cup has never seen, and it could be unlike anything we've seen. I just think the emotional exhaustion is going to be such that it really has an influence on what happens next. And then, of course, the other side of it is we've got Mbappe in the form he's in.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's, again, that England-France game's kind of fascinating, and the potential Brazil-Argentina one, as you mentioned. Mark, it's coming home potentially, and Saturday, I can't think of it. We'll get into it. I can't think of a bigger game than Saturday evening in terms of what's at stake, England versus France. England are 7.8, which I was a little bit surprised about. They are bigger price than Argentina and Portugal, albeit obviously they're going to have to come through France, maybe Portugal and Brazil or Argentina to win it.
Yeah, I don't think England are as far behind France as the betting suggests, actually. And I think if they were to get through that match, they're playing Portugal and Morocco for a place in the final, which they would be favourites for. So I think there's a little bit of wriggle room in that price to get England on side if you wanted to. I think there are still doubts surrounding their defence, and Pickford is always capable of having a moment or two. But, the midfield is working really well going forward. Few teams can sort of match them for the technical quality or the finishing ability in that squad, the depth that they have as well. But in the final third as well. And look, every team is flawed in this tournament. Brazil are probably the most complete, and that's why they are as short as they are. But England have their flaws, but probably fewer flaws than other teams in this competition too. And I think the recent experience of a Euros final and the World Cup semi is a huge bonus. It's given that group of largely young players a shared belief and shared confidence in the camp that they can go on and create a bit of history. I guess the big caveat is they've never won a knockout match in any major tournament as underdogs. So that's what makes Saturday such a huge match on so many different layers. If England were to come through it, it's kind of historic, really, and it sets up a real good opportunity to go and win the tournament outright. And I share the same concerns about Brazil or Argentina as Miguel does. The only thing I sort of back, which I did in my own analysis, was the fact that that semi-final takes place a day before England's semi-final. You get a 5-day break in between that and the final. Perhaps it's enough time to sort of heal and recover emotionally and physically to go again for the South American Giants, if it is those two in the semi-final. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think England are a bit closer to France than the betting suggests, and that means that there might be a little bit of value there in the outrights.
Okay, and Adrian, you're sticking to your guns, and you've stuck with your guns all the way through with Argentina. I know you mentioned England and France in the last podcast, particularly England at a decent price, but you like Argentina, and even currently, you think there's a small bit of value in the 7.6. I think we currently have.
I do compared to Brazil, because I think if they can get past the Netherlands, then I see it's a 50-50 game because of the emotion, because of their record against Brazil, which is pretty strong, I've got to say, in recent seasons. And because of Messi. I mean, Messi is playing an incredibly high standard of football. It's like we've rewound the clock 8 years or something. It's amazing, and it's so much fun to see. We're still on for the Messi Ronaldo final, by the way. That would be that would be quite something, wouldn't it? Not that Ronaldo would get in the side based on what happened last night, but I still kind of almost believe in that narrative. To be honest, even though Argentina haven't blown anyone's socks off, they're suffocating teams. I do like their aggression out of possession, which I think will upset opponents, and they still giving very few chances away, and they're scoring some great goals. So I don't know. I've still got a hunch that they haven't been the most impressive team to date, Argentina, but I still give them a chance. And I think at the price, when I compare it to Brazil's, I just think, well, I can't back Brazil at that price. So I'm going to stick with it. Stick with it for now, at least. But there was value in England before Senegal, and there probably still is. I think the winner of England-France goes to the final. I really do.
Yeah, so England 7.8, tentative selection for Mark. Adrian sticking with Argentina 7.6, and the caveat with Miguel 5.7 on France. We're going to cover the 4 World Cup quarterfinals. Look, this is just a brilliant time to be alive. We're recording this on Wednesday, pre-recording this on Wednesday. Can't wait for this to get going. Croatia, Brazil is Friday, 3 o'clock. Netherlands, Argentina, Friday, 7. Morocco, Portugal, Saturday, 3 o'clock. And England, France is Saturday, 7 o'clock. And if you are watching back, we are pre-recording this on the live stream. Do hit that thumbs up button and leave a comment in the YouTube on your best bets. And who do you think will win the World Cup, the 2022 World Cup? So we'll cover that first game, guys, and it's Croatia versus Brazil. And take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. You can currently back Croatia 10.0 on the match odds. Brazil 1.41. The draw is 5.1. Both teams to score. No is favourite at 1.75. The Asian handicap line sees Croatia with a 1.25 goal head start at 2.06. And the total goals is 2.5. Over to you, Miguel, and maybe just a general question on Croatia. Do you give them any sort of chance here, just given their World Cup record, their pedigree, and the fact that they didn't play great against Japan, but they still got the job done?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a difference between getting the job done against Japan and getting it with Brazil. I think they've been fortunate, I have to say, so far. They're a slow team now. I suppose the best way to maybe say this is they are a very experienced tournament team, and as we've said before on the pod, they're on the downward side of that cycle. Now it's almost a double-sided thing. Then that means they have the canniness to get through a knockout competition, as we've seen, particularly against more inexperienced nations in that regard. But it also means they're quite slow and stale, which is exactly what we've seen so far. Really, they should be out because, I mean, if Lukaku takes if essentially the ball deflects off Lukaku's midriff on a slightly different angle, they're out.
Yeah.
So Japan should have beaten them. And I do think Brazil, this is the other side of Brazil as well. They haven't been physically pushed yet. And they're it does feel like they're going up the gears. And I think, Croatia are probably solid enough and have enough nows to ensure they're not battered by Brazil. But I'd be thinking about a pretty comfortable Brazil win, and maybe a little bit like, say, a game it was actually when France beat Uruguay 2-0 in the quarterfinals of the last World Cup. It was an experienced team that had got to the quarterfinals and done well, but wasn't really going any further.
Yeah, Brazil and under 3.5 goals. And Mark, that's what you like as well at 2.14. And I guess you're in broad agreement with Miguel.
Yeah, very much so. Very impressive. I mean, a lot of the sort of pre-match favourites were very impressive in their sort of destruction of their opposition in the last 16. And I think when Neymar was included in that starting 11, you feared a little bit for South Korea just because the Brazilian tails would be up, and it didn't take them long to sort of click into gear. And by half time, the game was over, and Korea's spirit was pretty much broken before then anyhow. So intrigued to see how Chichi sort of comes into this game in terms of his system and style, because Lucas Paquetá has obviously been filling that role alongside Casemiro brilliantly. But I just wonder whether now we're getting to the business end of the competition, he will swap him out and bring someone like Fred in to hold things still in that central midfield area, because that is where Croatia's area of strength really is. But ultimately, Brazil are probably a little bit smarter, quicker, more physical than Croatia. And I think we saw in that game against Japan, the Croatian team starting to flag a little bit. They looked lethargic. They looked laboured for a lot of that period against a very energetic Japanese team. So, you know, Croatia's strength is certainly in ball possession, but outside of that, you wonder how they will cope against this Brazilian team. So they fielded, I think, the oldest starting 11 in a World Cup knockout game since 2006 against Japan, which is kind of going to saying something. We were sort of very critical of Belgium for doing that in the group stage, and they've just not been very ruthless. They've been reasonably controlled, but Brazil have been both of those combined, really. So plus the fact that to go 120 minutes, the emotions, the physical excursion of doing that before playing Brazil Monday to Friday, it's not the worst in terms of rest and recovery, but still probably not ideal when you've got that aging squad at your disposal as well. So yeah, I mean, Brazil to win another 3.5 goals at odds against stood out to me. In terms of the underlying metrics, Brazil have been the most dominant side at the World Cup so far. That's despite having a pretty difficult route to this stage already. They're earning an 86% share of the total expected goals in their matches. They lead the way for shots, on target attempts, shots in the box. In terms of expected goals against, they're giving up just 0.39 per game and fewer than 4 shots in the box. Only Argentina can better those figures, and Argentina's path to this stage has been a lot more serene, shall we say, as well. So they are, for me, the most complete team in this competition. And I think Croatia are going to have to really pull one out of the bag if they're going to topple them as well.
Yeah, Adrian, over to you. Just a broader question on Brazil and some of the dancing, and obviously you guys in the UK would have heard Roy Keane's comments, but over in RT we had a Roy Keane light and Didi Hamann with virtually going on the same sort of lines that the dancing's wrong and it's very disrespectful to the opponent. Bringing on 26 players, as in your third goalkeeper, is very disrespectful to your opponent. Where do you sort of stand there as an ex-pro?
Absolute garbage comments, in my opinion. I don't know. I just think, lighten up. It's the World Cup. Football's about having fun. If you can't enjoy yourself when you're playing well, scoring goals, people are going to have a pop at you for celebrating and for just having a bit of a giggle. Then what's the world coming to? There's plenty of other things in the world to get uptight about, to get to sort of get offended by. I don't think South Korea were offended by that. It's the Brazilian way. They love that. They're always doing these kind of dances. I just thought it was miserable. I really did. The
one thing I would say, I agree with you that it is miserly, but I suppose from a competitor's point of view, that Roy Keane is, you could understand if you're the opposition and you see that, it would rile you. That's the only rationale. But as far as the kind of as we know, and as all the Brazilian players have been saying since, this is just part of the culture. But then it's actually, some of it reminds me of the discussion around 3 lions, where people, for England, it was actually an ironic thing, part of the kind of just following the team. Everyone else thought it was arrogance.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a good comparison. So yeah, look, I just think if I was playing on a pitch and conceded a goal to Brazil, I know what's coming. I know they're going to have a little dance, and you're okay with it. I would be anyway. So yeah, but maybe I'm just not competitive enough.
Maybe not, Adrian. You're broad agreeing with the guys here as well, Brazil, but you're going to go over 2.5. Is that Croatia goal in there potentially for you?
I just fancied something different. I just wanted to offer up something different. I think Brazil and unders is a great shout. But I think there's every chance it could be over 2.5 goals and a Brazil win as well. Think about Alisson. I mean, he's made some good
Made
saves in this tournament. They've given up some, not many chances, but they've given up some half decent chances, and against teams that are possibly weaker than Croatia. So I wouldn't write off a Croatian goal here. I wouldn't. In which case, I would always absolutely back Brazil to get at least 2. In which case, Brazil and over 2.5 would come in. I also think that Brazil can get 3 on their own in the game. But it's basically, following on from what the guys have said, Croatia are old, but they lack sharpness. That's exactly what Brazil are. They're really sharp. They're finding their fluency. Those pictures that players are seeing are coming much more naturally now. The one-touch passes, I think, and the runners from deep could destroy Croatia in this game. And they look tired. I mean, they went to penalties. It was extra time and pens. For someone like Modric, that is knackering. It's not a huge turnaround. I think Brazil win this one fairly comfortably, but I wouldn't write off a Croatia goal. So yeah, Brazil and overs.
Okay, so a couple of ways you can go there with Brazil win and the combined with the under 3.5, as Miguel and Mark alluded to, or Adrian's going with Brazil and over 2.5. We'll move on to Friday night's game. Big one here. It's Netherlands versus Argentina. And if you think of the storyline here, Brazil potentially already qualified. This is for a Brazil semi-final. The pressure will be on these Argentinian players. Netherlands are 3.7, Argentina 2.28. The draw is available at 3.25. Both teams to score no is favoured at 1.86. The Asian handicap line sees Netherlands with a quarter of goal head start at 2.04, and the total goals is 2.0. Mark, over to you on this one. It's a fascinating game, and it's surprised to me that Lionel Messi scored his first ever World Cup knockout goal last week, but you just feel the momentum is definitely with Argentina at the moment.
Yeah, to a certain degree. I'm not as fond on them as possibly Adrian is, and I'm not buying totally into the narrative either. Football doesn't always work that way, really, and I'm yet to be they've yet to blow my socks off, really, and I know that's not really the Argentinian way. Under Lionel Scaloni, they have been much more battlers and grinders, despite the star names in forward areas. But yeah, this is a tricky one, a tight one. I think it could go either way, and I think the odds are a little bit too heavily in favour of Argentina here. I think the Dutch have got more than a puncher's chance of landing a blow here. But because of that, I think the draw is a big runner, and we might see extra time and penalties here. So I've actually gone draw and under 2.5 goals at 3.9 to tie in the 0-0 and the 1-1. As a rule, when the goal expectancy of a game is low, the likelihood of a draw increases quite significantly for obvious reasons, really. And the goal expectancy here is 2.25. And as you can see from the goal lines, you're only getting about 1.8 on over 2 goals. So you need 3 goals or more to be paid out at 4 to 5, which doesn't really appeal to me. So, I've got 2 of the potential 6 correct scores on side there at a really nice price to cheer on. Since 1990, 34% of all knockout ties have ended in 90-minute draws, and 34% of quarterfinal games have ended in stalemates too. The goals per game at this stage of the competition decreases to just 2 goals per game on average since 1990. So basically, if you back this bet, blindly since 1990, you'd be about 35% up in terms of your ROI, which is really quite impressive, actually. So I'm not saying you just do it blindly for every match, but this feels like an opportunity to do so, because I think it can go the different distance. But as I say, I think the Dutch, I thought Van Gaal put together a bit of a master plan really against the US in the last round, and he has the edge. That's where the Netherlands have the edge over Argentina, absolutely in the dugout. And Argentina made heavy work of being heavy favourites against Australia as well. So, a lot of this is dictated by their opponents, of course, and the approach. But Argentina have given away very little in this competition too. They're returning the best defensive numbers. They still have that genius up in forward areas who can win matches on his own. But I can see them sort of sticking in, hanging on here. And I think there's just going to be a huge amount of respect from the 2 teams, because Argentina will be well wary of Depay and Gakpo, but also I think the Dutch, in terms of at least with the team selection in the last couple of games, fielding De Roon in there alongside De Jong, they're more than happy to sort of engage and battle themselves. And I can't see anything else but Van Gaal putting someone on Messi. Whether that's successful or not, we'll have to wait and see. But they have underwhelmed me a lot in this competition, but it felt like they're sort of bubbling together themselves, actually, in terms of at least how they put the US out of the competition. I thought they really rose to the occasion, didn't have to sort of extend themselves beyond second gear. They were just a smarter team. They were more clinical, more efficient in what they did. So Yeah, I mean, I keep going around to the same thing, but I can just see this game going the distance, and I wouldn't want to back Argentina at those prices, put it that way. So the draw was the best solution for me.
Okay, yeah, Miguel, over to you on that one in terms of how you see the game playing out, because Mark's kind of giving you the stats right up until very recent World Cups. So in some ways you'd have to go along with that to a point, but I guess this Argentina team is a bit sort of plays on the cuff sort of thing and gets the ball to Messi a lot, and in that gets a bit of randomness that you might see a couple of goals in this game, perhaps.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this one is that it's two teams that will want the ball. The Dutch, though, in a more dogmatic way. I think it's going to be quite a tactical game, which feeds into what Mark is saying about it being low scoring. But because of that, I think it could actually be, in terms of purely how the ball is used, it could be quite a sterile game. But with that, then, how to put it, kind of spiked by this dogged momentum, Argentina. I don't think Argentina are particularly good. In fact, you could even. It's funny watching them. Two very different campaigns from 2014 come to mind. One is their own, where they just ground their way to the final, and their game against Australia was quite similar to their last 16 game against Switzerland in 2014. And the other is actually Brazil, where in 2014, where they made their way to the semi-final, but it was always in this kind of emotional roller coaster that could come down at any moment and leave them on the brink of collapse, which is what happened to them against Germany. I don't think maybe Argentina are quite that gone. I think there's a bit more kind of defiance about them, particularly in defence. But it's why I think this. So say if they were to eventually suffer that sort of defeat, I think it would come against Brazil. And I almost fancy them just to kind of carry themselves over the line against the Dutch through sheer bloody mindedness, with that potentially decided then by Messi.
Okay, yeah, Adrian, over to you to defend the case for Argentina here.
Yeah, I'm
Pelters
stubborn,
left, right, and centre.
I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking with Argentina. Yeah, Argentina and under 3.5 would be my pick. I think that Mark makes some really good points, particularly the bit about Van Gaal and Scaloni. I think Van Gaal is he's a class above really in terms of his tactical approach. What I will say is that it's one thing flying those wing backs up and down the pitch. Dumfries and Blind were superb against America. That if I was a manager, that's what I would have tried to do. It's like America rely heavily on their attacking fullbacks. Let's pin them back and put them going the other way and see what happens. And wow, okay, we saw what happened. Those two dominated the game. Now, are those wing backs going to dominate Argentina? Are they going to spend a lot of the time inside the opposition half in this game, knowing that in behind them, Alvarez might be spinning into the holes, Di Maria, etc. Not sure. I'm not sure they'll be brave enough to do that. I agree with the guys. I think it'll be a close game, pretty tactical. But Argentina have kind of been used to that this tournament, haven't they? I feel like they've got more intensity about them than Holland, and I'm not sure the Netherlands have really had a game yet where they've had to handle really intense opponents. America game was surprisingly sterile. The group game, it was a really easy group, wasn't it, as well? So we saw how England saw off Senegal, and Holland made a bit of a meal of that. I just think Argentina are a stronger team, and they've got better individuals, particularly at the top end of the pitch. And that because they don't give many chances away, only 4 shots against per game, compared to Holland with 13 shots per game. I just think that they're going to protect their own goal better than the Dutch. Yeah, Ake's playing pretty well. Van Dijk's growing into it. It's not been a disaster at all. Last game was good, but they haven't come up against anyone as good as Argentina yet. And I just fancied them. And even though they're short, Mark says they're quite a short price here. I do get that. Pairing it with under 3.5, you get 2.96. I'm pretty happy with that.
A tough game to call for sure. Mark drawn under 2.5 at around 3-1 currently. Adrian's going for Argentina under 3.5 at 2.96. And Miguel does expect there to be a couple of goals, both teams to score. Yes, it's currently 2.
I'm thinking 1-1, and it could go the distance. I think it'll be very tight though.
Yeah. 1-1 brings everyone into play. Bar Adrian, of course.
I'm going 1-0. 1-0, I think. Yeah,
1-0.
1-0 Argentina.
it does look. I know people want to bet in these games, but they do get tougher to call as they go. But hopefully, one of the guys has lent you towards perhaps having a bet there in that game. We'll move on to Saturday's action, which is another brilliant day of football. Really, to be honest with you, it's Morocco versus Portugal. We'll take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. Morocco can be backed at 6.2 on the match odds. I don't know if people watched the game yesterday. Portugal 1.71. The draw is available at 3.8. Both teams to score no is 1.79. The Asian handicap line sees Morocco get a 3/4 goal head start at 2.02, and the total is 2.25. Mark, I'll hand over to you. I did touch on the Morocco price, but I know they are getting backed a lot in various places too. So has there been maybe an initial overreaction to Portugal's win, and maybe some of the caveats, a bit like Switzerland, some of the sickness they had, and maybe the Serbia game, that people are kind of getting back on board a small bit with Morocco?
Yeah, possibly. If we're being frank about it, I would wait on this game for as long as I could, really, just because we need to see the physical state of the Moroccan players really after the match against Spain, who over the moon that they were able to take Spain a distance. Would have been nice to have a Spain-Portugal match in the quarterfinals, but well done Morocco for getting this far. It's obviously quite a historic achievement, but all the sort of comments coming out of the Spanish camp after the match where they were the superior side and by some distance, and I don't think that was the case really. I thought Morocco were outstanding in their performance. The game plan worked a treat really. Spain were very passive in their possession, and Morocco sort of cut down the passing lanes and made life difficult for them. So Spain had over 1,000 passes but could only manage 13 shots at goal, only one of which was on target, I think, across the whole 120 minutes. And that's testament to Morocco's system and setup. And they did cause problems when they did attack. I think the XG ended up around 0.71 to 1.01, and Morocco did that just off 27% possession. So I like Morocco. I like them from the start of the competition. I think their starting 11 is superb in terms of defensive fortitude and solidity. You've got two of the best fullbacks in the competition. Amrabat's being one of the players of the tournament in the defensive midfield role. Boufal and Ziyech just wizards on the wing, and then you've got Bonu in goal as well. So they're a tough team to play against, and they're being backed by huge support in Qatar as well, which is clearly making a difference in carrying them over the line when needs be. But Aguiar went off in extra time, injured. Mazraoui went off. Saiss had to finish the game despite looking very uncomfortable as well. And it's a quick turnaround from Tuesday to Saturday. So, we saw the impact of Switzerland against Serbia emotionally and physically, and having to go and play Portugal off a quick turnaround. They looked sluggish. They looked flat. And as you say, there was a bit of illness in the Swiss camp as well. But that is a bit of a warning sign to me. So I just want to see the Morocco team news before this match, before getting a really strong lead on this, because I would have been keen on Morocco +1, which was around 177. It's been backed into sort of 169 now. Because if Morocco are at full strength, I think that's a real runner at 1.77. Obviously not at 169. So, and yeah, just on the Portuguese team, I mentioned the Swiss issues. Portugal, obviously, when you saw the team news that Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't starting, I think gave everyone a bit of a boost in terms of Portuguese led, because he made some big calls. Santos, Neves not included, Cancelo as well, but it worked superbly well. They've got players, they've got Ferraris in the garage, and they came out to play really, and they looked really good. But Switzerland were desperately poor, and you look at the first two goals that they conceded. Hauser doesn't even make an attempt to try and shut down the shot from Ramos for the opener, and then the marking for the second goal from the corner was non-existent as well. And Portugal were clinical. They scored 6 goals from 9 attempts on target, 6 goals from 10 shots in the box. Morocco will not be as easy to penetrate, you would assume, even if they are a bit tired. They worked really well against Belgium, Croatia and Spain. So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be sort of well prepared and difficult to penetrate for Portugal. So across this competition so far, they've given up 1.95 XG from open play, which equates to 0.5 per game. As I say, they've played some really difficult teams already. The teams left in the competition, only Brazil, Argentina and France are allowing fewer shots per game than Morocco. And you could say Argentina and France have had a kinder route to this passage as well. And across the 4 matches, they've conceded 1 goal and just 6 shots on target as well. So it's just staggering numbers for a team of Morocco's calibre. So I think they can keep this competitive, but obviously wait on team news before getting involved. So right now, I think the best bet would be the same selection which Adrian has put up, which I'm not going to steal his thunder on. But I can definitely see his angle having a very large, a very good run at this, a nice price too.
Yeah, Adrian, I see you nodding in agreement. I guess Mark has stolen all your thunder with some of the stats you probably used there.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, right. Both teams to score. No, would be my tip here. I can't see this being a high scoring game. For all the reasons Mark has outlined, Morocco are hard to score against, aren't they? So the chance of a 0-0 here, I would say, are pretty high. Morocco, for all of their excellence without the ball and trickery on it, I love those two wingers. They did only have 6 shots, I think, over the course of that 120 minutes. And they're not the most potent of attacks, are they? So, I think they might find it hard to score in the game against Portugal, and they'll absolutely set up to frustrate, Ronaldo and co. Not that I think Ronaldo will start. I mean, Gonçalo Ramos has got to start, hasn't he? After that hat trick, that was a phenomenal story. Great, just a great performance from a young player, and it was a game-changing performance from Portugal because none of us really fancied them. They weren't looking that great. They'd just been beaten by South Korea. They didn't wow us at all in the group stage, but this was a bit special, wasn't it? It was fantastic. As bad as Switzerland were, I mean, yeah, Mark's right about some of that defending. I think the goalie as well did his best to dive out of the way of a couple of them. Jan Sommer, I mean, that was a pretty shocking performance from him. Talk about going to you're supposed to make yourself look big in the goal. I think Jan Sommer does the exact opposite sometimes. He just shrinks. So yeah, no wonder they were just clipping them into the roof of the net. It was a weird performance from Switzerland. But yeah, I think Portugal will edge the game, but I could absolutely see it going to extra time. And if they're going to win the game, I think 1-0, 2-0. The reason I would oppose Morocco is tiredness. It's absolutely, they were out on their feet the other day. And if they lose 1 or 2 of those key defensive players, I think they'll be hard pushed to actually progress. So yeah, but both teams to score no would be my main selection.
Yeah, Miguel, over to you, and you're in broad agreement, but parting it with Portugal. Just a little bit on the Morocco-Spain game, and a lot of the RT studio that you probably wouldn't have caught much of this over. But like aside from the inevitable Bono references, Kevin Doyle and Kenny Cunningham were using disgrace and other words to describe that Spain performance. Would you be as scathing as that after it, or?
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I was at the game. It was a Spanish performance I've now seen countless times. And being half Spanish, I was personally slightly disappointed. Although I was also pessimistic and pretty accepting of which way it was going because I'd seen it so many times. I do think there are bigger issues. I mean, first of all, I should say it was probably one of the best experiences I've had in the World Cup in terms of an atmosphere, also a culturally distinctive atmosphere, given really North African football in that sense doesn't really get the exposure it would have even 20 years ago because so much is dominated by the Champions League in Western Europe now. So it was really nice to experience that and to see how it was celebrated. It was the noise of something else. So I was at a proper cultural event in that way. And it's all the more ironic because Spain actually started that game, I thought, as if they were able to handle it. But as the game wore on, it just couldn't break Morocco down. I do have some sympathy for Spain in these situations because, I mean, it's a double-sided thing, really. Because of the way they play, it does mean that teams set up against them in the way they do to no one else, and that becomes very difficult to break down. Now, there are wider issues about why wasn't this Spain team as direct or as intense as Luis Enrique intended, because he'd made such an issue with this. Secondly, I think Spanish football has to start asking itself about the players it produces. You know, obviously it's still got a conveyor belt of Xavis and Iniestas, as we can see in Pedri and Gavi. That's a great thing. And the way they take the ball should be a lesson for young people. But where are the David Villas? Where are the Carlos Puyols? They haven't produced proper incisive players in that way for some time. Ansu Fati kind of stands out, as does Nico Williams, but they're extremely rare in a wider system. And that told against Morocco, who showed themselves to be, I mean, this is something I've increasingly taught throughout the last few days, culminating in that game. When teams like Morocco are in the quarterfinals for the first time in their history, when that happens, there's always a sense that these are kind of just upstarts, that it's a surprise, that they'll run out of steam and the quarterfinal is their level. But I didn't get any sense of that in Morocco. I think they're a really proper defensive unit with some high-quality players. And they're going to be a real test for Portugal. But I think that this game is almost... we've already had 1 or 2 of these in the tournaments, but it's a clash between extremes now. Without getting too dictated by the last game, But it's a side who don't concede much, only one conceded in the tournament so far, and that was an own goal. And now one that, with having dropped one of the greatest players of all time, but he's not playing like that anymore. But having dropped Ronaldo, Portugal have been released. It's like because they've got so much attacking talent beyond them, and it was like this great release that suddenly coalesced. So something's going to have to give there, but it's just why I would lean towards a narrow Portuguese win, but a very hard-fought game. So I'd be thinking kind of 1-0, but so I've gone Portugal and both teams to score no.
Okay, yeah, it's going to be a tense game, I think, Saturday afternoon. But both teams score no across the board. But Miguel sticking his neck out on the line and saying Portugal will just about get it done. We'll move on to the big game for English fans. It's England versus France. And I just think of the hype. If there's a Brazil-Argentina game, semi-final, and then you've got potentially Portugal waiting in the semi-final for England. This game is huge. And we'll take a look at the betting. It's England 3.15, France 2.56. The draw is available 3.35. Both teams score yes is favourite at 1.84. The Asian handicap line gives England a quarter of a goal head start at 1.83. The total is 2.25, and that's slightly shaded towards the over. So hand over to you on this one, Adrian. Is it coming home?
Probably not, but I have been impressed. I have been impressed
because you've been a critique of Gareth Southgate in the past.
Look, in previous tournaments, I've hammered Gareth Southgate for his tactics. I love every aspect of how he manages the team. Yeah. It's only the in-game decisions and the basic tactical approach that I would quibble on. But in this tournament, I haven't had any issues. Yeah, he was very cautious against America, but in all of the other games, I think he's picked the right teams. He's made the right changes. He hasn't played with a cautious mentality. It's played to the strengths of the team. And I've been impressed with Southgate in this tournament, impressed with England, obviously with Bellingham, one of the stars of the show, but the wide guys, you've got, 3 or 4 of them that are on fire. I think Harry Kane is playing very well, not buying into this narrative that he's been sluggish at all, that he's been contributing in all of the games. But they haven't come up against a team that will test them defensively. Have they? That's anywhere near as good as France. So that's the question. What does Gareth do here? Does he carry on with the back 4, with the 2 box-to-box midfielders either side of Declan Rice, or does he revert to type and play it safe with the back 3 that turns into a back 5 and you sacrifice an attacking player? I hope it's not the latter. And if it isn't the latter, I think it'd be a great game. I think it'd be a shootout, and that's why I've gone for both teams to score. Based on what I've seen of both sides in the tournament, they're much better going forward than they are at the back. I think we knew that anyway. France haven't kept a clean sheet yet, and if anyone that's watched England would think, well, they'll probably concede at least one against England then. And at the other end of the pitch, can I see England taming Mbappe and Dembele and Giroud and Griezmann for 90 minutes or beyond? No, not really. So I definitely see both teams scoring. I think this one stands out. But there is always the possibility, of course, that Gareth takes the ultra cautious approach, which I think would be to the detriment of the side, actually. I think that they've got to play to their strengths here and also try and target the weaknesses of France. And I think the weaknesses of France are down the spine of the pitch with the centre halves, the goalkeeper, and the 2 central midfielders. I think if England can put a lot of pressure on those players, that they've got a chance here of claiming a very famous win. I'd love to see it happen. I really would. But I'm not going to back England. I'm going to steer away from that. I'm just going to go for goals. Both teams score.
Yeah, Miguel, the reason I think this game is up there with the Euros finals, I think it's the first time we're going to get the answer of whether Gareth Southgate can get this England team past a team. While they're coming out of their peak, France, they're still a world-class team with the likes of Mbappe. And obviously the fact it's a Saturday evening game, all the context there, given the World Cup, the way it's going, it's just set up for us in terms of how big this is for Gareth Southgate.
Yeah, England, Southgate and Steve Holland, who we sat down with on Monday, was really fascinating interview. I have to say, he spoke a lot about how you deal with players like Mbappe and this this limited strand of players that you have to basically adapt your game for and give them special attention. And they're right to point out how they've constantly battled down these barriers. All that said, I do think this is the hardest game that Southgate has faced in the job, beyond Italy in the Euro 2020 final. I think France are a better team. And some of that is actually because they're a different team to Euro 2020. Because as you'll be able to read the next few days from my research and speaking to people around here, the lack of Benzema, the players feel it's actually tactically better for them. They like Benzema, get on with him, and they feel it can work, but they think it works better with this system. With Mbappe playing off Giroud, Dembele, and then Griezmann now as a sort of kind of attacking midfielder. That's made France... Oh, actually, sorry, I should correct myself. The absence of Kante and Pogba has made France maybe a little looser in midfield, but I think they're a more expansive team than they have been. And that can cause it challenges in another way, given it can pin England back. And that was sort of what Steve Holland was getting at as well, in that when you're dealing with players like Mbappe, it's not just about trying to stop them. You also have to try and shape the game so it pins Mbappe back and causes the French team to change their shape. So it's fascinating that. I do think it's pretty close to 50-50. I mean, I know I said earlier that France and Brazil are on the top playing. I really wouldn't have England that far behind. And I think if they can get through this, we are talking about an England team going to another level, in the same way that Steve Holland made a point of saying, well, all the attackers we had in Euro 2020, he's noticed they've all gone up. It's like mentality-wise, they've evolved. Bellingham is almost the clearest example of that, as is Phil Foden. A lot of their attackers are in really good shape, hence they can change a team, and it doesn't seem to matter too much, especially for the fact that then they can bring some of these different players on to hurt opposition in a different way. I think it'll be an open game because of all that. A tense game, but I think there will be goals. Maybe not quite to the level of, say, France-Argentina, the 4-3 in the 2018 World Cup, but maybe a similar pattern of game with England providing more of a challenge. I think Mbappe will probably tell the difference, but I'm actually not brave enough to go with that, because I guess Mark's already pointed to England are long odds here, and there's probably value there. So I'm going to go BTTS instead.
Okay, yeah. Agreement with Adrian, Miguel. That's going to be a pretty decent game, a lot of goals. And over to you, Mark, for your selection.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to be the lone wolf here. I'm not convinced this is going to escalate into a shootout.
Okay.
Because of Southgate and Deschamps. They are, by nature, pragmatic. They are cautious. They are conservative. This is a World Cup quarter-final, and I think there's going to be huge respect on both sets of squads and management. But, both these two teams, they won't fear each other, but I think there'll be huge respect and very, very wary of the threats each will pose. And I do wonder whether it will ensure one, or if not both teams, change shape, change system. And I'm going to back the draw under 2.5 goals for all the reasons I mentioned on the Dutch and Argentina game. But it's obviously not going to be the most enjoyable watch when you've got Mbappe and Kane and co on show. But just guarding against the potential here for Deschamps to look at that team and say, can I really attack England with Mbappe, Giroud, Dembele and Griezmann in my starting 11? Because there's not a lot of track back from the wings there. I wonder whether he will trade Dembele for an extra body in midfield, be a bit more pragmatic in that sense. And then England as well. I just wonder whether Southgate does go with the three at the back, and which obviously is much more kind of like a 5-3-2 out of possession. And, look at the Senegal game. I didn't think England started very well for the first half hour either. They grew into the game, but they weren't very fluent for that first half hour. Pickford had to make a big save as well. So I think both teams will be very respectful of each other. England's shot numbers have been pretty middling across the whole competition, despite being very efficient, very clinical and very impressive with the ball. They had 8 shots against Senegal, 8 against USA, 13 against Iran. They've scored 12 goals from 47 shots and just 6.36 XG. They've been converting at an unsustainable rate. France's numbers are much more in line with their metrics, but they haven't really been massively tested, I would say, so far in the competition. They did look loose against Poland, and that is a concern, as is the fact that they're missing their first choice midfield. But I just wonder whether Deschamps decides this is the time to start being a bit more pragmatic with the World Cup semi-finals at stake here. So, yeah, man, as I say, if you back this bet blindly over pretty much every knockout game in World Cup or Euros over the last 30 years, you'd be returning around a 35% ROI. So, yeah, I think the 0-0 isn't likely to happen, but I think the 1-1 is a big, big runner here. So perhaps you just take the correct score at 1-1, but draw under 2.5 goals at 3-1 is what I put up.
Yeah, you can find
criminal. Sorry, the criminal Deschamps and Southgate both made defensive changes, wouldn't it? I mean,
would you be surprised?
I wouldn't be surprised, no, but it would just be so miserable of them both to do that. Because so until this point, they've played to their strengths, and their respective front units have been fantastic to watch. I just would not mess with it personally, but yeah.
It's set up to be a fascinating game, whatever happens. And it's that sort of game that if it is cagey, you're still looking at it, waiting for something to happen. Listen, 1-1 gets us all home here. Both teams to score yes for Adrian and Miguel. And Mark's going for that draw on under 2.5, which you can find in Matchbook as match result, and total goals. Mark, it's a very popular market for those that usually play either team, but you can combine the draw with the under shout as well. So we'll do a full recap on insights.matchbook.com. Do check that out. So we'll go into the long shot section here now. And Miguel, this is a tough one to kind of get a correct score right, but this is appealing enough price here. Brazil to beat Croatia 2-0 at 7.2.
Yeah. What I can see clearly.
It's the same. Yeah,
comes back. I mean, Brazil have played similar types of games in this tournament against both Serbia and Switzerland, who prior to yesterday I would have had as superior to Croatia, and they won 2-0 and 1-0. Could have been maybe a bit more in both. And I think this will go the same game. I think Croatia are running out of steam and Brazil are only actually building momentum.
Yeah, so that's 2-0 Brazil, 7.2. Adrian, after your correct score last week, I was keeping an eye on the long shot section saying I'll be backing this blindly now. And then I saw France 2, England 2, 18.0. And I said, I'll have to wait for the case here before pulling the trigger. So take it away.
It's a meaty old price, isn't it?
You've outlined most of it. Yeah, go on.
Well, back to what I'm saying. I'm taking the sort of glass half full approach compared to Marco here, who thinks both managers will play it cautious. If they continue in the same vein, France and England playing to their strengths, looking to target one another's weaknesses, this will be a thrilling end-to-end game, a bit of a shootout. And I could absolutely see both teams scoring at least one apiece, and I wouldn't put it past them to get 2 apiece. I think it's just got potential based on what we've seen so far. Tactically, it's got potential to be a thrilling game, 2 apiece, and at the price, I might stick 50p on that.
Yeah, it's definitely one to long shots, and with liquidity coming up before the game, don't be surprised if we see that enter the 20s there as well, and then it does become appealing. Mark, you're being very boring on the podcast today. I know we want winners, and you're normally an overs man, so make the case for 0-0 Morocco, Portugal in about 30 seconds.
Knockout football in the World Cup, Dan. Obviously, goals per game decreases, and a lot of this relies on Morocco having key players fit and available, of course, but they have already played out 2 0-0 draws already in this competition against Croatia and Spain, so no reason to believe they can't thwart Portugal in the quarterfinals and take this game to extra time. Obviously, those concerns about fitness and fatigue are there, but if they are in place, I guess it relies more on Morocco sitting even deeper and flooding the midfield and making life difficult for Portugal, because they won't have the energy to sort of march around as they have done possibly in the past. But they've conceded just 1 goal in 4 games, allowed just 6 shots on target. They're very good at conceding few opportunities and few clear-cut opportunities too. So perhaps Portugal got all their goals out against Switzerland in the last round, and they might struggle to penetrate this Moroccan defence. So 10-1 on another 0-0 draw. I think I'm quite happy to cheer that on.
Yeah, I know we touched on the correct score before, but that 0-0 invariably before the game does get into a decent price, so it could be even bigger just before kickoff. And Miguel, it leads you into nicely to the best bets, and this is continuing on with our podcast best bet offer, but you're going for under 1.5 goals at 3.25.
Yeah, Morocco. I mean, I was contemplating Portugal and the correct scores. I suppose I referenced that above, or sorry, the long shots, should I say, not the correct scores. But I suppose I just think, I mean, also, if you go under 1.5 here, which is actually quite nicely priced, it allows for the possibility of 0-0 as well and right into extra time, which Morocco could do again.
Yeah.
And given the price as well, I think maybe this goes back to not. I mean, usually when I've gone for these, it's 4 goals. This is actually against goals.
Yes. And you did say in the Premier League podcast, you promised us you'd be starting putting up big prices of unders. So here it is, lately under 1.5 goals, 3.25. I'm sure Mark approves there, and you can get that doubled up there if you're a new customer. Enter the bonus code podcasts. Adrian, again, you're going all in on this. Both teams to score angle, France versus England.
Yeah, just following the same theme. But it's just the one that stood out to me when I saw all 4 games. I thought France, England, I can see goals. I hope both coaches don't go too defensive here. I think both teams to score is a great runner. France yet to keep a clean sheet. England's attack is flying. I think we can score at least one goal in this game. But would I back England's back four, or is it going to be a back three? We'll have to wait and see. Would I back them to keep out Mbappe, Dembele, Griezmann, Giroud? I couldn't really. I just think that this has got a decent game written all over it. And both teams to score at 1.85, double that up on the odds, and you've got a good price.
Yeah, 3.7 if my maths is correct. Mark, you, myself, and Miguel are doing a lot of green invariably with the long shot and best bet here. You're going for Brazil and under 3.5 goals at 2.14.
Yeah, well, Brazil were my fancy pre-tournament. I think they are and still, well, they were and still are the most complete side in the competition. And I think the evidence suggests that they're moving in the right direction, very resolute and difficult to penetrate defensively. They've got tremendous talent in attack and from reserve as well. And I think they should be able to break down a Croatian team that went 120 minutes against Japan, looked leggy and lethargic for a lot of that match as well, fielding the oldest starting 11 in the World Cup knockout tie since 2006. And I think they're going to have to do a fair amount of running in this match too. So, I fancy Brazil to get home reasonably comfortably, but chucking in the under 3.5 goals gives us a nice odds against price.
Yeah, 2.14 Brazil and under 3.5. We're done. My thanks to Mark O'Hare, my thanks to Adrian Clarke and Miguel Delaney. We will be back on Monday to preview the semi-finals, which are Tuesday and Wednesday next week. And then before we head to Saturday's third place playoff, I think it's Saturday, and Sunday's World Cup final. Until then, enjoy the weekend's action all the way leading up to England-France Saturday night. We'll be back Monday. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.